right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night anti-media radio-a-thon. This is the 8 o'clock version. And I'm your host, Jake Anderson. And interesting day. Kind of a historic day, actually, with Bill Cosby found guilty of sexual assault. Considered a pretty watershed day for the Me Too movement. And yeah, I don't think anyone was expecting that. But, you know, I mean, it's hard to imagine literally 6 different women coming forward and saying essentially the same thing and having it not be true. So, a jury of 12 unanimously found him guilty. So clearly the evidence was presented well by the prosecutor. And, yeah, one thing that occurred to me is, even though I'm obviously happy that justice was served, but it is fairly incredible that Cosby was convicted, but we can't convict some of these police officers for whom there is literal video evidence of them gunning people down as they're running away or choking people to death. You know, there is we have a demarcation in justice between law enforcement and citizens. You know, it used to be the rich and the poor, but it looks like maybe rich people obviously have a huge advantage. But man, when it comes to sexual assault cases, watch out, because we're in a whole new era now. And I'll tell you who's next on that list. Mr. Harvey Weinstein. There's considerable chatter in the rumor mill that at least one of his supposed offenses could constitute an actual rape charge in a trial. And if anyone is going to go down in the Weinstein era, should it not be Weinstein himself, if they can prove it? Rape is notoriously difficult to prove. Very small percentage of rapes even make it to court, and of those, an even smaller percentage end in a guilty verdict. And you know, this is just one of the signs of our times here, is that sex crimes are going to have to start being prosecuted more, because we cannot have a just, verdant democracy when so many people are the victims of crime, of such horrible crimes like that. It just doesn't work like that. So, what else is in the news? That's pretty much all I was looking at today. I was obsessed by that. Yeah, not a big day in the news besides that, actually. Pretty low-key day, actually. I don't have anything to talk about.
It's the calm before the storm.
Oh, there he is. Hey, it's my co-host, DB. He chimed in. I wish he chimed in about 10 seconds earlier before I said I have nothing to talk about.
That's true. There's plenty to talk about, I mean.
I know, but I'm not feeling the fire tonight, you know. What's that? Is it Billy Joel? We didn't start the fire?
Yeah.
That would be the soundtrack for tonight's show, but I'm just not feeling it.
I heard Christy Brinkley did confirm that he didn't start the fire.
Breaking news, everyone. He did not start the fire.
He was called, they called him Tiny in high school.
So, DB, what are your thoughts on the Cosby verdict? Because it's a pretty.
That's the big story on a slow news day, but that's the scariest part about our news cycle. That is the big story.
Well, dude, that's a pretty big deal. I mean,
well, it is, but Macron came over and he did the devil horns,
right,
and he's a fucking total global shill, and he came over and tried to convince POTUS to get off this empire rebuilding of the U.S. and just let the NWO take over, and he said, fuck you.
Now you're saying that because Macron believes in climate change, or...
There's two factions. There's Freemasons and there's Illuminati, right?
Uh-huh.
All right, so we all know who's who.
It didn't take you long to get into the Illuminati tonight, did it?
Yeah, the Oriental Illuminatus. The Knights Oriental Illuminatus, whatever the fuck.
Have you read the Illuminatus trilogy, by the way?
When I was young, dude, I can't remember that. There's another guy, John Twelvehawks, who delved into it with the fucking...
Well, it's hard to... Illuminatus is fiction. It's hard to read, though, man. I tried to read it.
It's not fiction, I don't think. I don't think that is fiction.
It is classified as fiction. Now, if you want to argue that it's actually not fiction, then that's a different...
I think it's actually not even soft disclosure. I think it's like in your face, but they mask it. I mean, it would make a lot of sense, dude. A lot of sense. Like Wrinkle in Time is kind of the same way, where they're trying to break you into the fact that there's multiverses. There's just multiverses. People can go through them. The beauty of creation and reality and existence is that there's different timelines. So when you jump off yours, you can't really fuck with the people that you just left. You can only kind of just go about your own existential godlike existence. But I mean, once you become to that level, that Tesla level where you can bend and shift reality, it's just, I mean, what does it mean to be human, right? That's the whole question. DB
Schwartz, ladies and gentlemen, he'll be here all week.
And that brings us back to Macron, because I mean, is that guy married to his grandma? I mean, she's a hot grandma, but
I haven't. Is that a slight at his wife? I haven't seen his wife.
She looks great for being like 30-something years older than him.
Well, good for him. You know, he's marrying up.
Good for her.
Well, good for her. Yeah. Except, I mean, he does have
her.
Good for her. So, okay. I mean, look. I don't think it's necessarily as black and white. I don't think the nationalism versus globalism issue is quite as black and white as you're making it. Like, I would certainly not consider myself a globalist, but I also would not consider myself a nationalist. And I agree with what he was saying about climate change.
Because you're a humanist, Jake. That's a big difference. Some people forget that they're a human being, that people in other countries that speak other languages, that basically live a completely different reality than you, are still human beings. And that's the biggest regret I have living in America, is that so many people forget that all the time. Like, we're so insulated and isolated that people don't remember, like, any time if another country with a good military wants to reach out and touch us, they can. It's not going to be like World War II.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, Americans' disconnect from the rest of the world is a huge problem. And I think there's a number of factors behind it. But the main one is simply that we live these, American exceptionalist lives where we don't feel like we have to educate ourselves about the rest of the world. And we live in this bubble bullshit universe of thinking that this empire that is extremely young, like really less than 100 years in terms of being a superpower, is finite. If you look at how long other empires have lasted in ages in which there was not nearly as much tumultuous globalism going on, It's just absolutely absurd for us to think that the United States empire is going to last as long as we're acting like it's going to last. And in the meantime, we're burning down every fucking bridge that you could possibly burn, so that by the time the change does come about, everyone's going to want to cut our heads off, and they'll be fucking justified.
And I think that's the goal. That's the entire goal, to get to the end game, the end point.
Right. I mean,
if you want to depop the planet, you have to make America get to a point where it's paranoid enough to start stupid shit like fight Russia and China at the same time. Get the American public so crazy. Now, they came close. North Korea was supposed to be the linchpin in the grenade, but now it's over.
Dude, yeah, that's happened. That's happened in the last week since we've talked last.
Yesterday?
What the F is going on? All of a sudden,
yeah. Yesterday, Kim Jong-un crossed the border. He's the first of this family that crossed the border over. He shook the hand of the Prime Minister of South Korea. It's over. The negotiations are beginning to end the armistice, to reunify on the peninsula.
What do you think is... I mean, there's probably multiple factors realistically going on, but I mean, this came out of nowhere. And this is a major... I mean, for the deep state, this is a loss, because North Korea was a major linchpin of the so-called axis of evil. It
puts them in a corner, because it's like, before they had that, and Iran, and they had Kazakhstan and Cuba. And now Cuba is falling away from them, and Iran is next on the chopping block. So they're going to be stuck in Kazakhstan. They're going to be there and in Israel, and Israel's about to boot them. Israel's about to do what's going on here. Now, I need to stress again. I'm going to say this one more time, because a lot of the times you and Nick think that I'm like pro-Trump or whatever. Here's the deal.
I know you're not.
Here's the deal. In America, in France, in the UK, in Israel, and probably in process right now in Saudi Arabia, the military-industrial complex is taking over from the elites. And I know that sounds hard to stomach and grasp, but we've hit a technological tsunami where, I guess, centralized public agencies like the NSA, their technology gap surpassed the private alphabet agencies. So in other words, they were able to intercept all raw data, including from the CIA and the FBI and every other MI6. They got it all. They got everything. And it went to a supercomputer AI that was more or less following a moral code. And the moral code said that these agencies were anti-human and evil and needed to be dealt with, and made that decision for them and instructed the MIC to do what it's doing right now, which is cleaning house for humanity's benefit. And I know that sounds bad and weird and vast and conspiratorial, but all the things are pointing to that. Q, if it is a person, would blow my mind. I think Q is an AI. And I think it has access to cell phones and cameras and data and everything. And I think it's fairly young, like 20 years old or less, and that it was programmed by people that were very logical and moral initially. So say what you want about Satoshi. He wanted to create Bitcoin for a very good reason, and it ended up doing something extra special, which was track all the sickest, most evil fucking people in the world because they thought they were invisible. And instead they left blockchain proof forever. And that's what's going on now. It's house cleaning.
Hey, I mean, I don't not believe you. I mean, it's nothing would surprise me at this point.
What Trump's doing is what he's getting ready for is like a world war. Like the wall is for a world war. Has nothing to do with stopping the flow of immigrants or any of that. It doesn't. It's not going to, and we don't want to anyway. We don't. Well,
that might not be the intended effect, but I mean, he's been pretty consistent about the purpose.
He can't tell the truth, and this is just all my theory. But he can't tell us. I mean, we're about to go to war, and we need a giant wall on the southern border because we can get invaded. People will be like, "Oh, yeah, sure."
Well, so who is this war going to be against?
Russia and China, dude, at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, that's the scary part, man. Is like when you see it, you're in Portland, so you're gonna see it before I do.
Well,
You know
good.
what I mean?
I just, I don't think that I don't think that the people who run things are that eager to give up their scruples, and that's what would
But
happen.
they don't need people much longer because automation's gonna make it to where you only need, like they've always proposed. 500 million people is plenty.
But the predator class is still going to need prey subjects to feed off of.
No, they don't. I mean, but for what? Their sick fantasies can be fulfilled by androids, and they just need people to keep the machines running, and a breeding stock. That's really it.
Well, I mean, okay, provided that the economic order is what people say it is, they need tax-paying consumers
For what, though?
System running. I don't know. For whatever reason, they currently need them or have needed.
Well,
them.
they don't. We haven't needed them for. I mean, how long is it until we have real AI and robotics?
And what are they waiting for? Have they just been waiting for AI this whole time?
Yeah, they're just waiting for AI and robotics
So
to.
AI, the moral code that you just referred to, is cleaning house in the military-industrial complex. But that moral code is going to allow the elites to kill off humans, all of them.
Well, it would have, but I think something shifted somehow. I don't know how.
So how is that moral code then going to allow us to go to war with China and Russia?
Well, people are still going to be able to make decisions. That's the biggest problem, is that it can go hot at any minute. I mean, Syria is the most obvious thing to me. Is if we hit enough Russian stuff and kill enough people there that are high value of Russia, they kind of have to respond. And I mean, China and Russia.
Syria is definitely like the most dangerous spot right now because of what that could set off with Russia. And if we got into something with Russia, China would obviously side with.
They have to.
But I don't. Honestly, I don't see China. I don't see China tacitly going to war with us, even if Russia did. China, I feel like, is more strategic than that. And I
hope you're right. They would. But I feel like
they would see themselves being able to play off of both sides and come out. They would come out as the strongest nation on the planet.
I would be inclined to agree with you if they didn't get so much food from us.
Yeah.
So that if a war with Russia went badly, and it would, then we would. I mean, that would impact their ability to feed their own citizens. I mean, we're all integrated and connected.
Well, then in that way, maybe China would lend some support to us in exchange for food.
I've thought that myself, but I looked into some of the reasoning behind the wall, and it's to prevent Chinese invasion to take our farmlands from us, just to take over, just to overload us. So I don't know, man. I know it sounds silly, like what could a wall really do? But I mean, if they had millions of troops, it would slow them down enough. I don't know, dude. Maybe we're really in a point where the people at the top really truly are just insane.
Well, I think it's. I mean, I think it's that, but I think also it's as we've talked about before. I think there's multiple warring factions going on. And that's why I like that idea of this intelligence war going on, because it makes sense to me that there'd be dividing lines between some of these different agencies, and that I don't think there's one set of Illuminati controlling things. I think there's untold wars going on between some of these, higher end agencies.
And I really do think it boils down to stuff like Wiener's laptop, where if the things that are being reported are on it, then there's people that are. Let me put it to you this way: if somebody harmed your family, Jake, I think that you wouldn't have a problem with revenge. I know I wouldn't, but I would never harm an innocent child. And if I found out somebody was doing that, I would literally want to end them. And I think there's a lot of people that are in power that aren't necessarily good people, But when they find out there's those people around them, they want to make them die. They want to kill them. They just do. I want to, and I don't consider myself, a violent, evil person by any means. But if I found somebody abusing a child, I would try to kill them. I just would. I know I would. That would be my reaction. So I think that's where we're at, Jake. I think that the people in the military and the cops, I'm not saying they're the best guys. They're not. But I think that a lot of them have kids and families, and I think when this shit got out, dude, I just think it made a huge problem, and I think it's just been bubbling up right now to what's about to happen right now. And the people that do these things are the people that run, like, the mainstream media. They've been buying government. They run our entertainment complex. They're those people, dude. They're Holly weirdos.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's the next shoe to drop is child sex trafficking. I mean, there already have been a lot of arrests, like in the last year, but I still just haven't seen anything that suggests to me that there's going to be big people dropping from it. I mean, I think Corey Feldman, is probably going to be dead within the next couple of years because of what he's doing. And I just think the people who control things, they just have too much to lose, and they'll literally do anything they can to stop that information from getting out. I
agree. But at the same time, I also know if things are going on, there can't be any fanfare in that way that people just won't know. I mean, this is my prayer is that things just get better. And I really don't even care whatever happens behind the scenes. I just don't. I just know that things are really messed up right now, and a lot of people are, like, basically barely making it. And that's a joke. Like, with the technology we have and the ability to make life better for everybody and to make life safe for everybody, that what's going on in 95% of the world right now is just complete bullshit. And if people would just say fuck it and make it stop, it would. It would. If everybody had just access to just internet alone, that would change everything. And I know that's unrolling right now, so.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how. I think one of the biggest problems we're facing is just this cultural war over socialism versus capitalism. It's kind of the war that will never end, because there is so much disagreement on how to spread these resources out. I mean, you can't even get people to agree on nationalizing a 5G network. There's just, I don't know. I really don't, even in this own country, people are just so violently opposed to one another on grounds of socialism versus capitalism that I just can't imagine us coming to a point of agreement at this point about how to. You can't divide resources right now without people claiming that you're socializing. I just don't see how. I mean, the easiest method would be to tax the rich, but people don't want to do that, and I understand why they don't want to do that. But
well, we have plenty of land. I mean, in this country alone, we could at least make a social contract with the people that were homeless, that we'd give them the land and build them the facilities to create crops and sell their excess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, at least we'd have an option here.
Yeah, but it's just like anytime you even discuss reappropriating anything public to give to the poor, it's considered socializing. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, people. I mean, they don't even want socialized medicine or healthcare because they think it's socialism and it's inherently bad. I just don't get it. I mean, these people they're so opposed to to government that they can't even see the value in changing the distribution of resources within the system that's already established. They're just like, take my ball and go home. I'm not playing anything involving taxation or resources or government, nothing. As long as there's a government involved and it involves taxation, it's evil, and I'm not going to support it. And so a lot of the people that could probably help a lot, both intellectually and in terms of resources, help us figure out how to make it not, help with equity, make it to where there's not people starving to death in the streets. It's impossible because they're like, nope, can't use government, can't use public resources to help people. Can't. It's socialism. And I just, like, I don't even consider myself, I don't even know what I consider myself, but we have the food, we have the resources to feed, clothe, and shelter everyone on the earth. And we're not doing it. And no one has a plan for how to do it. And I don't see how we can evolve. I don't see how the human race can evolve to the next level while we still have this level of inequality.
I don't know. Isn't that our biggest problem though? It's like
Yeah.
I mean, that really is the thing. It's like everybody is, I think, in agreement that somewhere out there is, a Tesla or an Einstein that's in an alley in New Delhi or something. You know what I mean? So, yeah, there's really no equality when we do have the capacity to intelligently allocate resources, and to also stop lying to people about energy being finite when we know we can use electromagnetic energy, which is infinite, which it's literally just the Earth spinning around that's creating that, and it's limitless. It just needs to be tapped. And so everything's a fallacy, because if energy is free, then everyone can have as high of a quality of life as you can literally imagine. I mean, we could all have unlimited everything all the time. They just keep it from us. They enjoy it themselves. I promise you on that. But they keep it from everybody to keep us, basically controlled until they can. I don't know. I hope they don't evolve to the point where they don't need any of us. That's just the thing that I think is kind of we're edging towards with this whole AI thing.
Yeah, I mean that would be, I think not only if it's like what we think it is, if the conspiracy is true, and they've been keeping this technology for decades and decades, just that revelation would cause a revolution. Just knowledge that our government, held us back for decades when the technology was there. I mean, that would be a huge, and maybe that's what's coming. I mean, really, with artificial intelligence combined with new whistleblowers and hacktivists, maybe the big history-changing paradigm that's about to come is maybe just an unstoppable revelation of all that's been going on. And maybe that's the 0 point of history that we need to happen in order to have a reckoning, is just blow the lid off of all the current governments. Imagine if all of the secrets of all the current governments were just literally, we woke up one day and it was all in our inbox. I mean, with a blockchain citations of resources and just everything there right in front of us, they wouldn't be able to run anymore, and they wouldn't be able to hide. They wouldn't be able to make up excuses. The media would be part of the disclosure as well, and it'd probably be messy and bloody. Possibly decades of wars go on, but at the end of the day, we could never go back to that old system ever. And maybe that's what's coming. I mean, I personally think AI is going to be the tool to that. One of them.
Yeah, I think you're so right. It's like, where do we shift to? That here's the thing: everybody needs to be down with this. When you see people on a corner asking for money, just know that could be you. It could.
Right. Yeah.
So if you get to the point where you'd understand that you'd be okay with actually people that were, instead of on that corner, in an apartment with an EBT card. Are you okay with that? Are you okay as a person knowing that somebody is going to freeload for life and be just like that. But they won't be on that corner, and you hope they won't be abusing themselves with drugs and shit.
Maybe some of them, will be, and that's
sure.
just, people have the right to self-destruct if they want to.
But that's the thing, is they're gonna self-destruct, and they'll just die. I mean, it sucks, but that's what happens when you don't get help and you OD. You just die.
Yeah.
So my thing is this, dude. Can we get to a point in society where it's not a basic income? I don't want people to have a credit card. What I want people to have is a decent place to live with an EBT card so they can go get food and water and pay their utility bill, so they're not homeless on a corner when we don't need them to be. Not in this country. We don't need that. And if they don't want to do anything with their life, so be it. But at least just get them off of the streets, because then they cost way more for all of us. I promise you on that. Every time a cop pulls one of those people into a squad car, it's more than their entire year of subsidies of some cheap-ass apartment and $500 a month on an EBT card.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So we could just do things more effectively. If we get to a point where people want to do the purge, then by all means. But I mean, until we get to that degenerate of a society, I mean, there's ways we can use our largesse. We're spending. I mean, we're on pace to break $800 billion for the military. So that's just on paper. You can definitely, you can probably say it's triple that. I would think. What do you think, Jake? $2.5 trillion a year sound right?
I wouldn't even begin to know how to guess that. But
I mean, what do they spend on just jet fuel? I think it's like $200 billion on jet fuel.
Our treatment of homeless people is shameful, and I'm not just talking about as a culture individually. I was having a beer at this restaurant, and I was watching this person on the corner, and she's always there, and she always has the sign saying, please help. And this is nothing new. I was just watching everyone just kind of walk by her, and I was just thinking, how few people stop and have sympathy and whatnot. And I did see someone stop and talk to her and help her. But it's not so much that people don't give money. It's the dehumanization of the person. Like, people don't even view the person as a person anymore. And you're right. People are so ignorant at how easily that could be you, how easily your life circumstances had worked out. And people say, no, I'd never be like that. I'd find a way out. No, you really don't know that, because you're thinking with your current brain chemistry, how you're reacting to things. When you're in a different place and time and different circumstances have created that version of you, you're not going to be thinking about with your current brain chemistry. And people are so arrogant about that, it drives me nuts. And I just really think it's a mark of who someone is as a person, the way they... Not so much the way they treat homeless people, the way they talk about homeless people. I remember when I was first here in Portland, I was drinking with this guy, my neighbor actually. And at some point in the conversation, it got to, homeless people and whatnot. And he came out with just such a brazenly warlike attitude towards homeless people. His attitude was basically they're all lazy dumbasses. They all deserve to be where they're at. None of them deserve to be saved. They're at where they're at because the decisions they made, and that's it. And I just remember being speechless for just minutes. And I didn't even know what to. I don't even know how to respond to someone like that. It's such a. I don't even know what the word for that kind of attitude is. But this is like a working class guy. He's like a waiter somewhere. It's not like this is like a trust fund kid or some like entrepreneur that made it on his own by investing in businesses. This guy this is a guy who makes his living from people giving him money to bring plates of food to them, and he's acting like this arrogant prick towards homeless people. And it's until we get out of that collectively, that attitude, and we all manifest it in various ways to a certain extent. We're all guilty of that kind of hubris and sociological warfare, and just until we get out of that and stop living as I and start living as we, I just don't think we can get to the next level until we're taking care of each other.
But we don't need to be a collective hive mind. We just have to have empathy. That's where it's at.
It's not about being a collectivized hive mind. Although there will be enclaves of that for sure. But it's about, thinking individually does not, you don't have to, there's this kind of, there's assumption that you can't be an individualist if you live within a collectivist system. I just think that's a fallacy. You
just have to be careful that you don't let it run amok like what's going on in China with the social credit system they're implementing.
Right. Well, is there even like a word now for what China's economic and government system actually is at this point?
It's communist for the proletariat, and then it's hyper-capitalism for the bourgeois.
Right.
And it truly is, because
isn't that kind of
a Lamborghini?
Of your...
Have you seen these Lamborghini and Ferrari dealerships popping up literally in every city in China because they have so many millionaires?
I haven't.
They have more millionaires in China than they have in the entire world combined. So wow. there's that many people worth $1 million US dollar USDA net worth or more. So every luxury good you can imagine is popping up in every city. And there's plenty of cities in China over 5 million. So is
there overall wealth greater than ours?
No, because the people in the top 1% of the U.S. have an ungodly amount of it. Right. People don't understand. It's unfathomable.
Yeah.
Like if you took the top 6 people in the U.S. and just took all their money and divided it down to everybody else, all of our problems would be solved as a country. Every single one of them. Every single one. Every bankruptcy would be reversed. Every home underwater would be saved. Every college tuition that won't stop charging interest would be paid off.
Every city without proper water.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything for the top 6 men that you would just take their money because they didn't earn it anyway. They stole it.
Oh yeah, they either acquired it or
they stole it. Nope.
Yeah.
There's no acquiring billions and billions.
No, I meant what they said is that they stumbled into some money and then they put it in high earning bank accounts and then they flipped it over into other. You know what I mean? Like
even if you think they earned it, like Bezos, they didn't because they established a monopoly. Right. There's nothing to earn when you're in a monopoly.
Right. I agree with you, and that's my biggest problem with free market arguments is that you cannot make an argument for the free market in a crony capitalist system because you're not even seeing a free market. We don't even have a free market. So
yeah.
So when people say, "Have we ever seen a socialist system work?" Well, no. Have you ever seen a capitalist system work? I mean.
Yeah, we need to get to a humanistic society, resource-based. There's Venus Project that gave a juvenile template of it, which was to use computers to allocate resources individually, but it could be merit-based with a baseline. I mean, here's the thing. If you're a human being, you deserve to have basics, okay? We can do that. As a globe, as a world, we can provide anybody anywhere with basics and then some. And the truth is, if people had the basics and then could just do what they wanted, I think a lot of them really would probably try to learn things and get good at them.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't be in a survival mode. Like you said, the brain chemistry changes when you get enough calories and you're not worried about dying. So, I mean, everything would change if people just had basics. And a little bit of dignity. Not everybody. There'd still be people that would OD and die. There'd still be people that would do absolutely nothing with their lives at all. But that's neither here nor there. That's not what creates wars and makes life hell on earth. That's just, it is what it is, man. And if you give people avenue to not live a fucking life of squalor and shit, they're going to probably take it. And if not, they're probably going to die soon.
Yeah, and also it's, this is this is a matter of an evolution that's going on. For the next decades and decades, there are going to be humans making awful decisions and ruining their lives because we're operating on the fly with a biological consciousness that we don't fully understand. We're driven by chemicals and hormones and shit that we don't fully understand, and those things directly conflict with social patterns and norms we've established. Like the society we've created does not mesh with the biology we deal with on a daily basis. So we have this vast paradox that's going on, and that's what's causing, I mean, in my opinion, that's what's causing all this chaos, is that, you know, our biology does not mesh with the system we've created. And I think we're headed towards something much better, but I think it's going to take, you know, I used to think we were going to get there in a few decades, and I think it'll probably be centuries before we get to people that I think humanity, and we've talked about this many times before, but I think humans are going to merge a little bit with machines to the point where they can kind of upgrade their consciousness and not be so dependent on their animalistic emotions and use the aspects of that they need for survival, while, you know, redefining our consciousness for what will be needed in terms of growing a civilization. And some people are going to opt out of that because some people want to be individualists, and that's okay. They can go out into the stars and do their own thing and do their free market out in space if they want to. But for those that want to stay within the human race, we have to have some kind of code of treating each other, and not a religious code, not a moral code. Well, I guess maybe we need a new morality. I don't know. I don't see. You know, I'm struggling even to find what I'm talking about because there's no answer for it yet. But we have not figured out how to live with each other or on the earth yet. And I think, you know, that's the 0 point history we're coming towards. At a certain point, we just have to get real about what it is we're actually trying to do, and who or what is inconsistent with that. And, you know, the predator class, people exploiting, they got to go. People hurting children, they got to go. And we'll flush out the main toxins over the next few decades. We'll flush out the major toxins, the major contaminants, and then we'll spend another 50 years perfecting where we're at, so that by the time we get 100 years from now, things are just going to look a lot different, you know. And is it going to be perfect? No, but we're headed in a better direction, I think, because
you're right. You're right, because the consciousness and awareness it's slow growing, but it's happening.
It's growing. People are more aware. Yeah.
And people are having children and teaching those children the truth. They're not sugarcoating. Not everybody is.
Right.
And these kids are telling their friends. I'm telling you.
No, the truth is growing, and you know, to a certain extent, we can hate on the internet all we want, but a lot more people know about what's going on right now because of the internet, and you know, now we're seeing this counterinsurgency where the powers that be are now trying to, you know, stigmatize the information itself, or they're trying to make it to where they can say that's fake news or that's a bad source. But at the end of the day, if enough sources are saying the same thing, eventually the truth's going to come out, you know, and you know, it's just going to take a while. We're in that kind of messy fucking century where people are going to look back and say, man, they had it rough, because we're right before the real Enlightenment. You know, there was the Enlightenment period. Well, that's nothing like what's going to happen in 100 years or 200 years, when we shed all of this baggage of the human race, and we're going to be, you know, not a new species, but I think a more defined species, and it won't just be biological. It'll be biological.
We will, though. We'll be a new species, because
maybe.
Could you imagine if we hadn't had a century of fluoride in our water? Where would we be right now if we didn't have such a dumbed down lemming? What if the people of the 50s, remember the 50s when people that was the last generation where children in junior high were doing calculus? I mean, the standards were higher. People were smarter. They just were. They hadn't been hit with 70 plus years of chemical warfare from an elite, whatever class they are, predator class that, decided, I guess after the Korean War, they decided that there was going to be no need for people eventually, and they were going to start this silent warfare against their own populations worldwide.
Yeah, God, who knows what they were thinking? I mean, there's just absolute psychopaths have been in charge for decades now.
There was this Iron Mountain report thing in the 60s that I've referenced before, where they had these top flight PhD types of different disciplines that came together and said, without the social construct of war, how do we control and manage the human population and prevent things like starvation and revolutions, and how do we maintain a status quo without warfare? Because they decided by the 60s that in the midst of the Vietnam War that they'd never be able to win the conventional war without going nuclear, so they were going to lose. So they knew that warfare was moot. You couldn't even have war anymore among superpowers because it was the end of the world.
Right.
So how would those superpowers manage the world and their populations and their spheres of influence?
So what they did is they manufactured threats that could be managed more easily with conventional war, and made us scared to death of these invisible enclaves of people that live in caves that we could control with traditional weapons, and they're all doing it. And that's another big 0-point revelation is going to be all the false flags that have been going on. I largely think it pertains to war, but I'm sure there's been a lot of domestic ones that have gone on too. But of course, it makes total fucking sense. I mean, you're absolutely right. They reached an existential crisis in the power management elite, where they were, trying to figure out how the hell are we going to control the masses. And this was in the late 90s, right around the time there was that massive WTO protest in Seattle that scared the shit out of them, and they were like, how the hell are we going to proceed with this kind of shit? And it didn't take long after that before that 9/11 happened, and we all know the history.
And there was a couple other things too that people weren't aware of with 9/11, which was that we were supposed to make a 50-year payment of all the gold we'd held for China on 9/12 of that year. So of course we didn't end up having to pay them back these thousands or whatever, how many tons of gold that they transported over to us for safekeeping during the World War, right before Manchuria was invaded. The Chinese dynasties, you remember how long these families were in control. I mean, they make Rome look like it was built in a day. I mean, I'm talking about families that were running China for 5,000 or 6,000 years, and they'd acquired immense wealth. I mean, if China was truly empirical, they could have taken the world over at a couple points in history, and they didn't, because
they didn't want that burden. Look, I'm not going to make assumptions about an entire empire, but does it really make sense to try and take over the world? I mean, to a certain extent, it's almost like there's a Western impulse to try and dominate the world. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And look at what we've gotten our fucking elbows and shit up to now, trying to control the whole world.
Yeah, and it comes home to roost eventually, and China knows that, and it did for them. I mean, they got a little crazy with trying to spread their influence in the seas, leading before Manchuria. I'm not going to say they deserve to be invaded, but Japan was feeling the squeeze from a much more populated neighbor, and they actually created an impetus to have a preemptive strike, and they used biological weapons on them. A lot of people don't know that. So Japan was feeling like they were going to be invaded. Actually, Japan's only not been invaded because they had some freak storms that sunk both Russian and Chinese fleets of 100,000 or 200,000 soldiers coming over on boats. They all sunk. I mean, it's just some crazy shit. And then
I am so fascinated by. This is totally off topic. Go ahead and finish first.
And I was just gonna say, and then another thing too. The reason the world is the way it is because there was this black plague that came over from the Philippines, and the Philippines got hit with these. I kid you not, they were called the Asian gerbil, and they got basically something happened over there where they got infected, and the Black Death hit the Philippines, and wouldn't you know it, because it was like a Spanish viceroy at that time, it came over to Spain and then basically wiped out half of Europe. And it wasn't from rats. It was from the Asian gerbil, dude. And the craziest thing was Japan didn't get any of the gerbils, but China got hit with them too. So like Japan was one of the few countries in the modern or the known world at that time that didn't suffer like 50% population loss.
Yeah. What I was saying is when I was saying off topic, it wasn't what you were talking about. It's what I was thinking, which is I'm obsessed with giant ships being sunk by giant waves. I always have been. And the thought of entire fleets just being taken out by storms with big waves. I don't know, man. I just got a soft spot for. I don't know. I've always been fascinated, first of all, by the idea of naval war, of just hundreds of ships out on the sea. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating what we've come up with on this earth. But then,
they're still down there, Jake, because they were wearing armor. You know what I mean? The soldiers.
Right.
So they sank right down to the bottom, and they're still down. They're skeletons in armor down there.
Oh, man. Crazy.
And it's, of course, sacrilegious to do anything with trying to dredge them up or anything. No one would do that.
Well, they're probably they're probably so deep down there that
they were saying they could get them, but that it would create a politically it would just create a nightmare. Like whoever would do it they would fear for their lives. Like the people's ancestors would not be cool with it.
No. Crazy. Well, we got about 6 minutes left here. What else we got going on?
So when you're coming out, it's basically unbelievable here. It's like 80 degrees. It's pretty perfect.
Yeah, it should come soon, man. It's we just hit a major spring burst here. It's actually been the same here. Actually, it's been in the 80s. It went from like 40-degree weather to 80-degree weather in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was snowing. It was snowing 10 days ago here.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, huge.
Pretty cool.
Huge weather shift, and
I love my friends and family back home, but I have to say I really do like seasons, and you don't get that in SoCal, or even NorCal for that matter.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing I won't ever miss. I hate it. That's the thing I hated most about California is I like seasonal changes. Fall, autumn is awesome, spring is awesome, and it's just the same season all year long in California. It's just lame. But yeah,
we should get Mexican food though.
Yeah, I should come out to Minnesota and see you sometime, man.
You'd like it here, dude. It's like two distinctly different cities. One's about half the size of the other, but they got their own vibe. And
talking about St. Paul and Minneapolis.
Yeah, and then with all the suburbs together, it's about the same size as San Diego. It's just spread out about 3 times as much area. Like today, I had to drive from work to St. Paul, and it took me like 40 mintes.
Have you heard any? What are the local reports about Al Franken since his fall from grace?
He's disgraced.
Yeah,
If people think he's a real turd. I mean, I'm sure there's still some people out there that think he got framed or something, but the guy's, he admitted I mean, there's pictures. He's a douche.
Well, he didn't get framed, but of all the people that have done douchey things for decades and decades, I mean, you know, look, I'm not gonna defend Al Franken, but come on, I mean, people. It's just.
I mean, it honestly.
It's just funny. It's ironic. Funny. It's ironic.
Is that the same thing as Trump's pussy thing? I mean, there's varying degrees.
I would say it's about on the same level. It's treating women like second-class people and using your power to exploit them sexually.
Yeah, I totally agree. And dude, like, it's just, you know, you learn from it or you don't. I don't really believe that Franken was too different, but
no, I don't. No, I don't think he was different. I mean, look, it'd be stupid of me to sit here and split hairs. I'm not doing that. But here's something to point out: Trump is still in office, and Franken is not. And Franken.
Well, true.
Franken took a bullet. He didn't have to go. The Democratic Party chose to oust him out so they would have the moral high ground. So it was a political move. Don't ever think it was anything but a political move. It was not a moral move, because if it was a moral move, they would have made, what's his name, the other guy that got charged, and they let him retire. The old black guy that had been there forever.
Oh, that fruitcake who'd walk around in his office in his underwear in front of aides?
So they let him peacefully retire. They didn't kick him out. Of course, if he was going to try and stay in office, maybe they would have. The point is, Franken took a political bullet, and is it sad? No, it's not. He deserves everything that happened because he was a fucking idiot. But it's just, I don't look at it as the Democrats making this huge ethical move. I think it was a political move. All right, we're ending on Franken somehow. Well, another awesome hour of Mind Jack.
Hey, you know what? You're good enough. You're smart enough, Jake.
All right, later, everyone.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.